So in this video we're going to remove this armature pipe. I'll show how to get this cleaned up. Okay, so the other side is set up and I went ahead and took a Sharpie marker and I'm going to drill my holes now, and because that I have this greased up on both flanges in the middle, I mean it could fall open. Likely it won't, but you know, I'm going to be rough and tumble in this thing and I do not want to deal with it falling open. So I'm going to drill these holes and run some bolts with some wing nuts, and at that point I'm going to pull this pipe out and we're going to get that patched up.
Hey, thanks for being with me today. Just want to take a minute and say be sure to check out the description down below where you're going to find the different materials and equipment that I use. I also recommend books there as well, and you will find my social media links listed below. You get to see what's going on behind the scenes in my studio. Please like and subscribe to this video. Liking helps me get found in the algorithms, and it helps me spread this free education for everyone. If you do find this channel worthwhile and you think worthy, would you consider making a donation to my PayPal page at John Burns Fine Art? I do give 10% back to our local charities, and we all appreciate your generosity. Thank you.
So in this video we're going to remove this armature pipe. I'll show how to get this cleaned up. First thing I'm going to want to do is to break this grip on this pipe. I don't want to be really aggressive because my sculpture is still in there, and I don't want to deform any more than I have to. Well, yeah, let's go ahead and trim off the excess here. Okay, so for now, I'm going to put my X-Acto to the side. Because I loosened this thumb screw. And see, this here can rust too if you use regular black pipe. I like this galvanized pipe much better. And if you really want to do your mold maker a real service, think about your armature ahead of time on how it's going to be able, at least the armature support, how it can be removed prior to putting your sculpture on it. Now if I want to, I could take every part of this off, and I might, and I will. Now this here, I made this armature so that I could pull it out. Some people, they lock their armature onto this particular pipe, and we've had to go in with angle grinders and things like that, and it's not good because then I'm still molding this pipe in there, what we can't cut. But I made this so that it would still support my sculpture and it would still be able to release by finessing it and pulling it through. Which was basically my armature on the front with two little prongs that went inside the pipe, and then I pulled a bread tie around it and wrapped the bread tie around the threads of the piping, and that's very easy to pull through. You know, you don't have to have a lot of strength to do that. Okay, I'm going to take this clay and shove it in this hole for the moment. So I'm going to get this all cleaned up and ready to go. And once I have it there, wherever I laid down my X-Acto, here we go. I'm going to go in there and cut this open. So I'll invite you back to watch me cut this open. Okay, so I have this cleaned up as well as I'm going to do it. This clay was so wrapped in plaster, I'm just trashing it. There's a lot of dust here. Just got a chip brush. Close your eyes before you blow. Anyway, so I got the dust out, right? And okay, so let's hope I did this well enough here. You can see where it leaked around the pipe. I'm going to go in probably about 1/2 inch. Well, let's just start right at about 1/4 inch. I can always cut more. So I'm just giving this a little tug. Basically, you know, something is going to create enough tension that as I cut it pops out of the way. So again, this is a time when being mindful really matters. And I'm not stabbing and cutting down. I'm trying at this point to pull it forward and to gently slice the silicone. I am pulling it off of my sculpture to do this, I'm aware. But by digging down, you're creating an area that needs to be filled later. Okay, so there. This is kind of interesting too. So I don't know if you can see this that well. This is interesting because you can see the bottom layer, then that red layer, and then the outside layer. So this is around the pipe, so this isn't the true thickness. But you can see here, orange, pinkish red, orange, and that's a pretty good, I'll put my finger right up to the edge there, so that's a pretty good thickness. So I'm down here, and I think what I'm going to do is open it up here. So I'll go up another 1/4 inch. Yeah, and that's falling back down onto the sculpture. That makes me happy. I nicked it. That does not make me happy. And I have these pieces down in here, which are the actual armature. There's one piece of metal. There's 2 pieces of metal. And as long as I can get in there without damaging the sculpture too badly, I'm going to grab them and clip them. I know the batch I'm going to mix that I'm going to mix up is bigger than this hole. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it up a little, cut it wider. So this is an actual, the interior of the mold where it would have been had I left this section in. And that looks pretty good. There's no bubbles, has a really nice thickness. And in fact, this thickness is good enough that this is going back down to the figure. When I put the next layer of silicone on top of that after I've patched it up, there might be a slight elevation shift because that mold is lifted up higher, and then of course the new material would be down lower. so there could be a little bleed under, but that's really not that bad because that would be very easy to camouflage with a tool. You know, we're not talking major gaps here like you see on some imported mass-produced items. Okay, so I've got my clay and I have enough reference material around here that I think I can patch this up pretty easily. I'm just going to start putting clay in there, and I've trimmed the wires back as you saw. Okay, so this is where I'm going to go in here now and take the time and clean this up. I'm not going to record that. I really want to get this right, and I can't shoot it from that angle, so see you in a few. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got the hole plugged, and I went ahead and did a little more sculpting there to make sure the surface was good. I'm glad that I opened that up the way that I did, because I wouldn't be satisfied with my work had I not been able to see, you know, the rest of the area. So now that I have this set up, there's one thing that I can do here. Okay, so as I mentioned, these areas have lifted up ever so slightly. When I touch, I don't know if you can see that kind of flex a little bit. I'm not really thrilled with that. So if you take some T-pins like this is the idea, some T-pins, and you can shove these through the silicone to pin it back down to your sculpture. And if that feels like that can stay down without having to push this head down all the way, you know, don't go any further. I'm just going to give it a little tug here just to ease off of it to make sure that it's not compressed. I just want it to be sealed. So I know that I initially hit this with crystal clear. I'm not going to do that this time because I don't want to make any type of seal on this silicone. I want the silicone to adhere to itself. So this is just going to be a bare spot. It may seem a little toothy inside of the actual casting. So you'll see like a smooth sculpture and then this kind of toothy area. But if you end up doing a patina, it's not an issue. Okay, that's how we're going to finish it. So stick around. We're almost there and you'll get to see what it looks like. So this is another way you can do this. I just took some clay and wedged it, pinched it, and as I squeezed this down here, like just squeezed it, it was pushing it in both directions obviously, but it helped close off the space because I could still see some hairline space. I don't like that. I'm being picky. This is not the end of the world if you have a gap there and close it up. It's quite okay, but I'm particular at this point in my mold making career. I'm particular, so I went ahead and put these things in there to help make sure that this is down all the way. If you guys are at that point where you're picky, there you go. If you're not picky, just use the pins or a paneling nail, anything like that. These galvanized nails, you know, just hold it down until you can get your silicone on there and cured, right? Okay, we're about to get live. All right, so went ahead and mixed up a batch, put some THIVEX in there. You can see how sweet this stuff is. I mean, when you have silicone piled that thick and it's staying like taffy, this is a great product. I was always sheepish about getting it, but I encourage you to get it. You know, you'll come up with the money if you want it, and you'll be happy that that's how you invested it. I don't know why I waited so long when I did it. All right. And remember, when you're putting this on here, I tried to like use a blotting type of method or like a dabbing. I can see it's trying to get ahead of me here. To get into the cracks. And this just kind of works out the air before it has a chance to get trapped. If you just pile this on there, you're probably going to get an air bubble. And I would really enjoy it. I'd really enjoy it if it was impossible to tell. You know, as someone who makes molds, I find myself, and you'll be able to relate to this in your own way, but I find myself in department stores or over at people's houses or wherever there's products that have been made, looking for seam lines. And even when I'm in gallery sometimes. Curses. 1 second. Running that space heater in my shop. It can be pretty difficult to hear. Ugh. So anyway, I catch myself looking for the seam lines, how they put it together. And I've had one artist tell me don't look too closely. In spite of him saying that, I still couldn't find the seam lines on his work. But you know, you'll see toys. If you're a toy collector, I'm not. I have kids. But anyway, you can look at their toys and see how they're put together. You know how the molds come apart, how the industry approaches molding something like that. You know, these are like clues that you can study. Okay, so I'm not convinced that I got all the air out up there in the top. But if you kind of stick it and pull like this, sometimes you can see bubbles kind of break. You just stick and pull. It should grab and kind of pull it away enough. Don't do it too much because you'll have to go back in there and do the process over. Maybe that's necessary, you know, don't shortchange yourself if you feel like that's what you need to do. Okay, that's looking pretty good for me. I feel pretty confident. So, you know, I'm getting silicone on stuff. That's not a big deal. On the edge here, like this. Once that cures, I can just pull that right off. That's not an issue. It might even fall off. Okay, so I'm satisfied with this where it's at now. If you get silicone on your clothes, it's better not to smear it off. Just leave it. It'd be a lot easier to peel off later once it's cured. So I've got a batch yet. I hate to waste this. So I'm going to go find something to slather this over in the next 30 minutes before it completely kicks. If you ever find silicone that doesn't cure, put it in a warmer environment and it should help. Manufacturers actually recommend putting it into like some type of hot box to do a post-cure, which will, you know, actually take it to its maximum curing state. But I've never done that. Never. Okay, guys. So it's been a couple days now. This feels about as firm as the rest of the. So here's the old stuff, and this is the new stuff. And it's obviously this thin stuff is, remember how I just wiped that on there and said we could take it off? That's how it works. And you know, I won't really be able to check my work for sure until it's cut open. So I'll just take and move these. So my studio is cold, and that's why it took longer for this to cure. And you know, if it is cold or colder than their recommendations, which is no. Here's what I'm gonna say. My studio has been somewhere in the neighborhood of like 55 degrees, 65 degrees. So it's been having a little trouble curing, and that's okay. So I got my straight pen here. It just takes a little longer. So I was running space heaters in here to try to get the temperature up so this stuff could cure, and it seemed to help. So I've got my little scissors and just clip this stuff off. Okay, let me just say that I was pulling this here. I got my big old fat head in the way so you couldn't see, but I was pulling this off of here, and I did not wipe down the silicone with you know, like rubbing alcohol or anything like that to degrease it. Luckily, where I made my fresh cut, you know, along this edge, had no grease on it. But when I was doing the mother mold and so forth, I mean, there's no telling my oily hands touching this and all that stuff. It probably acted as some type of a release and allowed me to pull it, the stuff that's superficial here on top. I can tell that some of this stuff that I peeled off of here hadn't fully cured yet. It's still slightly tacky. I mean, it hangs off my finger like tape. So it's been 2 days, but it's been, like I said, cold out here, and it needs to be a certain temperature for this stuff to fully cure. So obviously, I mean, it's still tacky, isn't it? But what I can do is put this in a room that is a lot warmer. The exothermic reaction from the hydrostone might be enough heat to help get this a little more stable, this silicone here. See, like that? To me, that's not a big deal. That's just where it's spread over. I mean, I can keep pulling that back and trimming it, but it's fine. It's not cured yet, so I'm not gonna take any chance at messing it up. I'm gonna go mix up some plaster.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and grease up this flange with some Vaseline and get that prepped for the next batch of hydrostone. This hydrostone, I let it soak for about 5 minutes till it looks like wet roofing insulation. I have my spritzer bottle handy in case I need to smooth out some clumping areas. So I've discovered this new technique with plaster bandages. I cut my sections into ready to use pieces ahead of time, and I soak them in the hydrostone just very quickly, get them saturated, and then apply them to the piece. This prevents the hydrostone from running down the silicone and pooling in the bottom. I have my chip brush handy to brush it around. And this is great for a first layer, and you can apply your fiberglass on the next layer. So that wraps it up, and glad you guys came along. Thank you.
Such a beautiful day. Just taking you outside my studio here. It's a beautiful day in Oregon. Look at that.